What's good, YouTube? Welcome back. Today it is Lazy Daze Tubby, and I'm back at it again with some more history reaction for you guys today. And I am doing some more Kings and Generals content for you, and it is Caesar, the Gallic and Civil War series, part 3, Caesar and Britannia and Germania. I'm really looking forward to finding out what Kings and Generals have in store for me in this episode, and the content they produce is always amazing. So if you haven't already, head over to their page. A link is in the description box down below. If you guys are enjoying my content, like, comment, subscribe, hit that notification bell. But I am just going to jump straight into this one.
56 BC, Caesar had subjugated the majority of Gaul, either through conquest or political alliances, and was beginning to look for new opportunities to expand Rome's influence. But not all the Gallic tribes were taking kindly to Roman rule. One such tribe was the Veneti, located in modern Brittany. Despite signing a peace treaty with Caesar the year before, they reneged on this promise and captured a few Roman officers.
Okay.
As a largely seafaring nation, the Veneti were confident that they would be able to put their faith in their navy and force Caesar to make concessions. However, Caesar spent no time trying to negotiate, instead seeing the act as a direct declaration of war, and marched on the tribe.
Straight up. Caesar really didn't care.
Initially,
he just needed a little excuse, and he was there.
Due to
he
their
was like,
large navy, the Veneti were able to effectively hop from town to town, moving entire populaces and their belongings, denying the Romans a pitched battle or siege.
That kind of makes sense.
Standard Roman tactics proved ineffective, therefore, and it was clear that, in order to win, Caesar had to defeat the navy. With no navy on hand, he ordered that a fleet be built in order to take on the Veneti navy. But compared to the Roman ships, which were designed for the Mediterranean, the Veneti ships, designed for the Atlantic, were much stronger and taller, and the Romans found them impossible to ram or board. It was only through the ingenuity of one of his legates, Decimus Junius Brutus Albinus, who suggested that they use billhooks to cut down the sails and cripple the Veneti boats, that Caesar was able to defeat their navy. With this issue sorted, it now seemed that Caesar would be able to move on to new conquests. Once again though, his plans were put on hold in 55 BC, when yet another roaming German horde, composed of Usipetes and Tenchtheri, began threatening the Rhine border. These tribes previously rivaled the Suebi, but were now fleeing in huge numbers, Caesar giving their total number, including civilians, as 430,000. They had already slaughtered the Menapii, and stolen their ships in order to cross the river, and were now pouring into Gaul. Upon hearing about this, Caesar was once again compelled to act, as he was worried that the Gauls might join the Germans in an attempt to oust the Romans. Some Gallic tribes in the Rhine Valley had indeed sent emissaries to the Germans, providing them with food and intelligence, encouraging them to move deeper into Gaul. Caesar gathered a council of Gallic chiefs, and convinced them to provide more cavalry for him to confront the Germans. This served two purposes. Firstly, Rome's cavalry had always been lacking, and the Gauls were renowned horsemen, and so filled a crucial role in the army. And secondly, because cavalry was composed largely of nobles or wealthy persons, they would act as hostages, ensuring good behaviour. He then gathered 5 of his legions and headed to the Rhine.
Interesting.
The Germans had sent a portion of their cavalry ahead of their main force in order to carry out raiding missions, but hearing that Caesar was getting close, they sent emissaries in order to delay him. They asked Caesar to negotiate, claiming that they were only in Gaul because they had been forced to flee from the Suebi, and promised to ally with Rome if Caesar could provide them with land in Gaul. However, Caesar suspected that the Germans were delaying and continued his advance.
He just moved straight up. Caesar really can just see through the bullshit.
As Caesar continued to progress towards the German camp, sending forward his 5,000 cavalry as an advanced force, but with orders not to provoke them into attack. However, upon seeing the Roman cavalry separated from the main force, the Germans fell upon them. The Romans initially tried to hold their ground, but were eventually overwhelmed and retreated to the safety of Caesar's camp. Caesar likely underplays the amount of casualties taken, giving the number as 74, but he does mention that 2 brothers of the famous and influential Piso family had died in the fighting, something that Caesar could not let go unpunished.
Oh wow.
Refusing to hold back any longer, Caesar gathered his force to attack the Germans. But before he moved off, the Germans sent a party of diplomats, including high-ranking nobility, to treat with Caesar, once again asking for peace and apologizing for the attack.
But they...
As the Germans had already attacked apparently without provocation, Caesar refused and took the delegates as prisoners. He then drew up his army in 3 lines and moved swiftly to the German camp.
Okay, so he didn't kill the diplomats, because obviously he's still trying to look
assuming
like the
that
good guy.
Caesar still would have been delayed by their envoys, were caught completely unaware. The legions fell upon their camp. Caesar brushes over the details, but it seems to have been somewhat of a massacre. The fleeing Germans were pursued by the Roman cavalry. Some made it across the river in their boats, but many tried to swim across and drowned. Hearing of the defeat, the German cavalry, which had been pillaging, returned across the Rhine. Caesar's army had taken minimal casualties. It is important to note that while Caesar portrayed this as a great victory against a marauding Germanic horde, this is not how others saw it.
No,
To
I don't
Caesar's
think so.
political rivals in Rome, Caesar had broken the armistice with the Germans by antagonizing them with his cavalry, imprisoned diplomats, which was effectively a declaration of war, and then carried out a massacre, including civilians.
Yeah, because they were trying
Caesar
to
needed
say
something to distract the Senate and win the minds of the people.
Yeah, because the other problem with it as well is they were trying to say that they were fleeing due to other issues, so it doesn't look good for Rome as a country or as an empire, republic at this point.
So he decided to boost his popularity by doing what no Roman general had ever done before, crossing the Rhine. The Germanic tribe Ubii offered its ships, hoping that the Romans would assist in their war against the Suebi. Caesar, however, deemed this unworthy of the Roman people, and instead decided to build a bridge across the Rhine between modern Andernach and Neuwied. It was an engineering marvel. The legion's engineers used winches to act as pile drivers, driving stakes deep into the river, and constructed the 140 to 400 meter by 7 to 9 meter bridge in just 10 days.
What?
Caesar found the lands beyond the Rhine almost deserted. Taken aback.
And also shout out to the engineers, of course, because obviously they're the ones who were able to make it happen. But in general, just wow.
By the Roman speed and their feat of engineering, the Germanic tribes in the area had retreated deep into the Germanic forests, where they had amassed a significant army. However, Caesar had no desire to be caught in a prolonged campaign in foreign territory against a notoriously dangerous enemy. He spent just 18 days on the German side of the Rhine, burning villages and crop fields before returning and dismantling the bridge.
Just dismantle it after.
The campaign was a proof, not only to the Germans, but also to Caesar's rivals in Rome, that he could overcome anything and do as he pleased.
Wow.
Caesar's next
Caesar really just whipping it out and like just shaking it all about for the Senate over in the Roman Republic there. He's just like, I will do what I want. I will wave it where I want, and there is nothing you can say about it.
Ambition, Britain was once again a perfect propaganda target. The island was on the edge of the known world and rumoured to be a land of monsters and vast riches. It had remained effectively untouched, and bringing it into Rome's sphere of influence would be a significant achievement. According to Caesar, the Britons had provided some of the Gallic tribes with the resources needed to make war. While this was a weak casus belli, Caesar was, by now, effectively doing what he wanted with little oversight. He began gathering intel from the Gallic merchants and sent a small reconnaissance force to the island, whilst he mustered the ships he used against the Veneti and prepared to cross with the 7th and 10th Legion. He set sail from modern Calais and safely made it across with most of his army, but his cavalry had been delayed by bad weather. The Romans saw the Britons had amassed along the White Cliffs of Dover in huge numbers, with infantry, cavalry and chariots, and with every warrior painted in fierce blue war paint. Caesar moved further down the coast in order to find a better place to land, but was shadowed by the Britons' cavalry and chariots, who were easily able to keep pace with the fleet. When the Romans finally found a suitable beach, Caesar arranged his transport vessels into a long line with his warships on his flanks and ordered his men to disembark. As the transport vessels had deep keels, however, they were still some way from the shore, and the legions were forced to wade in waist-deep in water to try and reach the beach. The Britons saw their opportunity and attacked, firing missiles into the ranks of the legionnaires as they struggled through the water, weighed down by their armour. The Briton cavalry charged in and out of the Romans, the height advantage of being on horseback allowing them to fight much more effectively than the Romans stuck in the water. The legionaries were taking significant casualties, and seeing this, Caesar moved his shallower-keeled warships up the flanks so that his missile troops and ballistae could fire into the Britons' sides. Still, the legions were wavering, with some men not even being willing to get off their transports. It was not until an eagle-bearer of the 10th Legion leapt into the water and waded towards the Britons that the legions rallied and rejoined the battle in earnest. The fighting was fierce and contested, with the Romans gathering to their nearest standards to try and maintain some form of cohesion, while Caesar used rowing boats to ferry men from the transports to areas where the Roman front line looked to be in danger. Finally, the Romans were able to push through the shallows onto the beach, where their organisation and heavy armour could come into play, at which point the Britons broke off and retreated. Caesar, without any cavalry, had no choice but to let them escape. We don't know the numbers of dead on either side, but being a contested landing, it's likely that the Roman losses were greater.
Yeah, I definitely think so.
Following the battle, the Romans established a camp on the beach, and the Britons sent delegates to sue for peace, probably to assess the Romans' purpose in the area. They were on home ground and could afford to wait to see what Caesar's next move would be, whereas Caesar, with no supply line, would be pressured to make the first move.
Yeah, he's got to.
Caesar accepted the peace, and the Britons sent a small number of hostages, promising more later.
Okay.
The cavalry that had been waylaid did try and cross once again to meet Caesar, but were caught in a storm and forced to turn back. This same storm damaged the ships that Caesar had anchored off the beach, demoralizing the Romans, who could no longer escape the island. Salvaging what materials he could from the most damaged ships, Caesar began repairs. He sent one legion at a time to forage for food, whilst the others defended the camp on the beach. However, whilst one of the legions was out foraging...
Imagine now having to worry about we've got to at least defend ourselves to the point where we can build enough ships to get home. Like, it's just another thing you have to add on your priority list. That's really tilting.
The camp watch reported seeing dust on the horizon, moving their way. This, combined with the lack of the promised extra hostages, was enough to alert Caesar to what was happening. He gathered 2 cohorts and marched quickly to the legion's location.
Okay.
Whilst foraging, the legion had been ambushed. Scattered and focused on collecting food, the Britons had been able to kill a substantial number of them in the initial attack. The legion had managed to regain some level of discipline, snatching up their weapons, but they were surrounded by the British cavalry and chariots. British charioteers were trained to throw missiles from their chariots and then dismount to fight on foot, before hopping back on the chariot when the fighting got too hard in order to regroup. This gave them the staying power of infantry and mobility of cavalry,
That's a really
tactic Caesar
interesting
admired,
tactic.
but was now taking a heavy toll on the surrounded legion. Upon Caesar's arrival with his cohorts in formation, the cavalry and chariots retreated. The Britons had no desire to fight heavy infantry in formation in a pitched battle without their own infantry support, and allowed the legion to withdraw to camp with Caesar.
But
However, bolstered by this success,
their,
the Britons amassed their full force of infantry, cavalry and chariots and marched on the camp. Caesar drew out his legions to meet them. So far, he had been fighting in difficult circumstances, in water, in ambushes, against a highly mobile enemy. But this was an ideal situation for the Romans, where their formations and discipline could truly make a difference.
Okay.
The Britons charged, but in these conditions, the
it.
Romans had a significant advantage. Whilst the chariots and cavalry had proved highly effective against small groups of Roman infantry, with the legions in a cohesive line, they now had little effect. The Britons quickly caught on to this fact and disengaged, their chariots and cavalry leaving the battlefield. The Roman infantry was now able to surge forward and catch a portion of the Briton infantry, routing it completely. The Britons were excellent at hit-and-run tactics and ambushes, but in set-piece battles, the Romans were far superior. Once again, the Britons sent a peace delegation, and Caesar, knowing that his options were limited and that he did not have enough resources to carry out a full campaign, accepted and then hastily withdrew from the island during the night. However, on his way back to Gaul, 2 ships were blown off course in a storm. 300 Romans were stranded and surrounded by a Belgae tribe, the Morini, who Caesar had only recently subjugated and were keen for spoils and revenge. The Romans were assailed from all sides with missiles in hit-and-run attacks against their small group. Caesar caught wind of this and gathered as much cavalry as he could to personally lead them to the men's rescue, managing to ride down the Gauls and save the Romans with only minimal casualties.
Yes, Caesar
would later be sent into the Belgae territory to winter there and reinforce Roman rule in the area. Neither the invasion of Britain nor this foray into Belgae territory were significant military achievements. However, they show why Caesar was so loved by his men. He was brave, achieving things no Roman had ever done before. He was calm under pressure, and most importantly, he would lead from the front and showed that he cared for his soldiers and was prepared to risk his life to save them.
That is for sure.
The British campaign had not...
Caesar is becoming... I really liked him at the start, and then obviously... I really liked Caesar before I found out about Napoleon, Napoleon I wasn't really aware of until I started YouTube. But a lot of the other generals I am, and Caesar has always stuck out to me, and this series is making it do it a bit more for me. I just really enjoy what Caesar does and the way he's crafted his way to power. Obviously, I don't agree with it, but it's a really interesting story.
Achieved much for the Romans, but it did provide Caesar with crucial knowledge about the Britain's military, the climate, and the level of preparation that he would need to succeed, lessons he would learn from for next year. Moreover, the Roman public and Senate were amazed by his feat of crossing the Channel into unknown territories, and a full 20 days of Thanksgiving were declared to recognize his achievement.
20 days. 20
The history
days.
of the Celtic people is often forgotten when talking about Roman conquest, so we decided to remedy this situation by recording a new podcast talking about the historical and archaeological records of the Gauls and other Celtic peoples. And you can listen to it via the link in the description or the pinned comment. Our series on Caesar will...
I definitely think I might hit that up myself. I really enjoyed that episode by Kings and General, and I'm definitely looking forward to seeing what he has next for me. If you guys are enjoying my journey through this and my reactions, then please like, comment, subscribe, hit that notification bell, but I am going to catch you in the next video.